Hi, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, there you are. You can hear me and
I can
everything.
hear you.
Oh, excellent. How
Yes.
are you?
I'm very well. How about you?
Excellent, excellent. I I loved your sense of orchestral quality in the beginning of the partita. But I was just wondering whether it was worth thinking about this in terms of uh, what an orchestra would have sounded like in. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? She's begging to be fed. It's Iman. Iman, you want to come say hi? Come on, come on, come on up. So she's having her treats. She's been very good. I've been with the Iman Takata for 2 hours, and she was sitting right by me. And then she said, "Enough is enough."
Enough.
She needed a
Yes.
little bit of treats. So I was thinking about this opening and the wonderful orchestral sense that you bring to it. But I was wondering also if we were dealing with Bach's musicians of his time, who are not necessarily the Australian Radio Orchestra or anything like that, and who knows, maybe there was a cellist on the gig who could never do the cutoffs on time, and so it would just sort of ring over, and so I sort of began to like that as an idea, and the idea of the church sound contributing to the resonance. And so the idea of doing these as selectively evaporated harmonies seemed to be, and I didn't really have time to experiment with it myself. And I haven't played this piece for many decades, but I like the idea of perhaps working with. Do you hear how I'm creating? I'm evaporating the harmonies. I think I could probably use that first one to ring a little bit longer. Let me try that one again. You know what? And I'm actually allowing the middle voices to ring over, because if I ring the top voice too much, it becomes too melodic. If I go like this, that's too much like a main voice. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking of I'm first of all thinking about the right hand, not long at all. No, no, actually, no. Let's leave the upper two voices as we want them. Yeah. What I'm saying is this is a mode of experimentation, completely up to you, actually.
Yes.
But the idea is that I didn't feel that we were utilizing all of the possibilities available to us, and this is a texture that is going to prevail for this entire opening of the Sinfonia, and so I really feel like we want to be malleable with these sonorities, and take into account Leon's second law, and take very great responsibility for how we release each one of these notes, and decide that yeah, and it's actually all that we have. What kind of piano do you have there, Ashley?
I have a Yamaha C5.
Yeah,
It's getting on in years. It's about 40 years old, but
yeah, it's
it's doing
fantastic. That's
well.
wonderful. My whole thing lately, and I'm just so that we're leveling the playing field here. This is my own version. Is my piano text version of a New York Steinway.
Okay.
But the thing that I've been so enamored of working on the all of the fortepianos and harpsichords is this idea of the porousness, the transparency of the sound, and how modern piano technology, in particular the Yamahas, the Youngchangs, the Kawais, these are all pianos predicated on the idea that they want to be able to create a full sound at the touch of a button. and they're really not terribly good in terms of niceties of articulation, and we can argue about that, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing that they are good at, and the one thing that we can't really access on the harpsichord, but we can access dynamic contrast, and they're really good at that. And I think it's really something that we always have to be very careful of, something I really need to be careful of myself. Because oftentimes, particularly on these pianos like the Yamahas, there's a sense of having this fullness of sound that we want to maintain. And I feel like that makes us sort of straining at the edges. Rather than creating a sound and listening and watching it go down the cathedral walls and hearing how the sound changes. I love the idea. That's how I always thought of playing Scriabin. I always, rather than sort of static harmonies, I always thought of them as harmonies and sonorities that would all of a sudden duck into one of the alcoves of a cathedral walkway. Sort of the sound is going this way and then it just sort of disappears. But there's a sense of spatiality that we get when we talk about sound in exactly that way, that I think can be very much available to us if we really overuse the dynamic contrast available to us on the modern Yamahas, et cetera, et cetera. So virtually every two notes needs to be, or should be, in my mind, a decision, a calculation about, is the next note louder or softer? It'll never be a matter of maintaining a sound. Even if we had, as we do in the opening of the Italian Concerto, if we have a forte marking, that does not necessarily mean that every note is played forte. It means that the general dynamic is forte, and there are contributing factors that contribute to that composite dynamic of forte, but it is not a matter of one note to another being forte. And so here, we're actually coming from nothing. We can actually come from nothing again from the sound. We can really, we don't have to continue. We don't have to continue. We can actually pretend that was the piece. And now we had a thought. And now that's exciting. And then we're going to continue this sound. Oh, wait a minute, where's the bass? We're expecting it. Oh, and now here it is. All of these surprises, some things fall into place very nicely and others really don't. And I think it's always good for us. And this is, of course, one of the few movements that he actually gives us a tempo marking, right? Because of course he wants to, give the next movement. The andante a separate tempo. But it's essential that we have adagio as an idea. But aside from the marking itself, everything we do in terms of momentum has to do with the surprise of not having a chord on the downbeat, for instance. That's a very determinative term. And how we want to make this initial progression finish off. So for instance, see, because that's another thing we can do. Because there's no downbeat chord, we can actually refute it and actually go in the exactly opposite direction. And now the surprise. And that surprise, that C7 chord is a surprise. And so we can use that it sounds like we're making a huge agogic, but all I'm doing is I'm actually making a full chord roll, and it's just delaying the downbeat slightly, although it feels like I'm going absolutely right full. I can actually take even more time, even if I want to roll the chord a little bit longer. And here's one more thing that I think is probably good, and I probably should have mentioned it from the very beginning. We want to make sure that in some way these two voices of the right hand are differentiated. So even if we decide that they're two trumpets, they still have to be two voices, and they will definitely not match their articulation. Okay? Even if they're brother and sister or husband and wife trumpet players, we have, and I think it's probably a good thing for us to cultivate. I like, for instance, we want the top voice to ring, so I'm actually making the top voice slightly longer. The bottom voice is released. And now, because I want more warmth, I'm still bringing out the top voice, but I'm actually doing them finally both full length. But the first one I'm not. And I want them both full length so that they can compete. But now here, I think because the top voice is going to come out quite naturally, I'm going to make the bottom voice a little bit longer. The other nice thing is, even if I want the top voice to be the main voice, of course we do, the idea that the bottom voice is a little bit longer creates more of an enveloping sense of warmth. If I were to really exaggerate it, that even if I were playing that top voice as horribly short as I was just playing it, the fact that I was playing the bottom voice longer makes it sound like the top voice is still singing. But let's do it not quite so exaggerated. I think this is actually a good clue that all of a sudden, since we're not in thirds, because we're not in thirds anymore, we have this single voice. I think that's a good clue that we don't have to end this all completely full out symphonic. I mean, it's a pretty good sense, but I think that clue of one voice instead of two is got to be something we take very seriously. I mean, if he really wanted to, he could have written two staves, on the same note. So he really is creating, I think, a very brief sense of dynamics by texture, right? When I talk about if we've got two voices in the right hand, it's going to be a little bit longer. We like a little bit louder, just by virtue of physics. I love the idea of really creating and cultivating a sense of differentiating between those two voices. Even though they're still the same kind of timbre, they're still trumpets, they still have to have the sense of voices, of differentiation. And as you can hear, it's not about playing one louder than another, it's about creating a very distinctive sense of articulation and diversification from that. So now... Yeah, see from here, actually, this is one of the few that I would love to have a nice Berlin Philharmonic release where he says the rest should be. I don't know what it is. It's because I've a little bit melancholy, pathetique here. Now here's one important thing, Ashly. I'm playing this on a Steinway, and if I wanted to sing this on the Steinway, my first instinct would be play it, right, to play it legato and smooth, very smooth transfer. But I like. I don't like that idea of. I like the of two gestures, so that we don't necessarily have full length on each note. I want to address this one moment in terms of note heads as placeholders, not as directives of actual length of the note. So in other words, I don't mean. I'm actually thinking of these. Do you hear how I'm making a little bit of a space there, because I'm creating this connection, and then I'm creating this one, and I'm actually creating this a little bit more declamatory. I'm actually doing the diminution. I'm doing the intonation correctly. So for instance, this is a half step, and so that's always going to be, or often, is always going to be a sigh, and a rather painful sigh. So legato. But this, a major second, is not going to be a sneaky, snaky. It's going to be, right? That's what I mean when I talk about intonation. There are very specific properties of connection in conveying particular intervals. Intonation on the piano refers to everything that we can do to convey the truth of an interval. So as I say, that's I overhold the minor second, up or down, or major second. That's a step. It really, we have to have it as a, that needs to feel like a step. It needs to feel like an exertion of some kind. This is an insinuation. So that's a whole step. This is a half step. So now from what I was getting at was here we want to have. There's our major second, so it has to be sort of a little proud, right? Wouldn't you say, Ashley? What do you think? And now this, that's a very, very emotional tritone. I think we need a real legato for that. No, Chris, that 30-second has to be a little bit longer, because it's not just a snappy thing. We can't. No. Do you hear that interval? Do you hear the truth? That's good intonation, don't you think? We just have to do what we need to do, but we have to really do it. I think also we can be free with these 30 seconds. I love the idea of this as an overture, etc., etc. But I think these dotted rhythms, when we get into the well-tempered clavier in particular, there are so many places where even the best minds say, "Oh yeah, he just meant, he wrote it as a 16th, but he just meant it as a dotted note. Play it as a..." No, I really feel like he meant these in very distinctive ways, and the 30 seconds I think he means in ambiguous ways. I think it can be militaristic, and I think it can be emotional. I think it can be expressive. So, and actually, I stole this from my friend Vedran. When we see fast notes, we're used to Beethoven. We're used to making the fast notes exciting. As Vedrina says, the small notes need to be the expressive notes. Because they look more exciting does not make them exciting. It makes them, in Bach, I feel that it needs to make them more expressive. And that's also a dichotomy, because on the harpsichord, faster notes just sound more exciting because they make more noise. But we have to... the thing we can do on the piano that we can't do on the harpsichord is on these fast figures, and particularly when we're doing them as an embroidery, we can make sure that we don't begin them. We can actually insinuate them, because you can hear we are accumulating sound. The sound accumulates. We can't. We don't want to present the sound. We want to gather the sound. We want to collect the sound. We want to explore the sound. And here again, it's very important. I really make a very great distinction between each of these voices. I think it's easy to pick out this top voice, so therefore I make the bottom voice a little longer. Right? And just for me, just because I'm just fussy, it's again very easy for the top voice to come out, so I like the meaty, the nougat center of this little candy chord. And actually they're and actually the more we concentrate on the middle voice, I'm sorry, we can really create much more excitement on the top voice here. When we really want to hear the top voice, we can really bring it out. But I like that accentuation of those middle voices. Now, all of this needs a little bit more, a little bit less policeman in the left hand. I wish there was a way we could do this. Can you play your right hand alone? See if we can play. Can we play at the same time? I'm not sure if that's even possible. But I just want you to play your right hand alone. I want you to play your right hand alone, and I'll accompany you with your left hand. See what it sounds like. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. The idea is, Ashly, I never played one of those bass notes until I knew exactly what you wanted to do with the melody. I did not have an idea of the tempo in mind. I had an idea of being as good an accompanist as I possibly could. And so what that means is that, first of all, it gives you every opportunity for dynamic differentiation. There is no need to project the melody at all. So, for instance, all of these can actually be can be an outline of a chord. It doesn't have to be. We don't present it. We can make it more of a gesture, and then falling. And again, I see these strings of 16th notes, but all I'm doing is I'm creating a relationship between every two notes. Ending there. of these falling motives need to fall dramatically, precipitously, dynamically, and also articulatively. They can become more, and they start out articulate, and they become a caress. And so, with that in mind, we take whatever time we need to make as expressive as we want the right hand melody, and we use the left hand to support that in time and in sound. We don't want to balance the sound. We don't want to have a sense of, and I don't know whether you've heard me make this analogy, but I've had some pretty amazing, fantastic teachers who have insisted that we should always have a sense of balance of the sound, like a proscenium of a stage. Like the melody is right side of the stage, and then the other column holding everything up is the bass note. And so, for instance, like in a Rachmaninoff concerto, no matter how crazy things are getting, we always want to have a sense of the melody and the bass note, always resonant, always sort of the rock of our structure. But I realized only recently how ridiculous that idea is. And it's ridiculous because, let's say if we had like a wonderful jazz singer, like the American, like Nancy Wilson, an old jazz singer from the 80s, and a great jazz bass player, Ron Carter. Let's say they were just doing a duet of any song, and let's say that they had in mind to do this thing, where Ron said to Nancy, "Oh, how loud are you singing this place, Nancy? Because I want to make sure that I balance it with the bass note." I mean, can you imagine how ridiculous that would sound? How dumb that would sound? We don't balance the melody. We support the melody. We allow the transparency to allow the right hand to sing. So the first adjustment we need to make is to allow the right hand, the material of the right hand, to determine the momentum. It's very tempting because the left hand has these regular eighth notes to allow the left hand to set up a momentum. But it's much more interesting to play the left hand in a way that makes the right hand sound best. To really make each voice a collaborative voice, not just a voice that says, "Oh, she wants to take a little bit of time here, so I'm going to take a little bit of time." You want to create the sense of space that, like we just did when I played with you, the sense that you can do whatever you want, and I will not move along without you. Did you have that sense? Did you have that sense of being able to do whatever pace you wanted, and I would accommodate you? We have to create that same sense with ourselves. And so that's why I think it's very important to play the right hand. And I think for the present, I would exaggerate these dynamic things, these exaggerated dynamic sweeps, going down, getting softer, going up, striving, achieving a little bit more, going up. So where's it? Do we ever go up? No. Yeah, we do. Yeah. So yeah, you hear how that I'm not holding them all in one hand. I'm letting that be a caress. But that I'm going up the hill that way. I think always when we go up, you hear a little bit of articulative stuff in the rising notes that you didn't in the legato ones. No? Yeah. Here's another fallacy that I find when we look at things visually, Ashly. We want to connect all of that. And I'm starting, and particularly when we were dealing with the E minors again, I'm dealing with these textures, and where I would normally, and where we would always think about these textures as sort of a toggling back and forth, or this, that kind of ostinato idea. I am cultivating like crazy the idea, a sense of release to each one of those gestures, and instead of an ostinato back and so long, I'm actually making a very strict habit of the last 2/16 of any 16th note pattern are always going to be shorter. And also, I love the idea of being able to end them in midair, rather than having this sense of continuation. And so, in this passage, I think the idea is to use these as self-enclosed passages. To not actually make these as ways of reaching the top notes. Sorry. I think it's really, we just need to take each of them as a caress. I mean, we hear the note going up. We hear the note on its way, don't we? Right? But we don't have to delineate it. We don't have to exaggerate it. Where are we again? Yes. And actually, let's, if we really have a hankering to go upwards somewhere, we can do it with the left hand. We can actually do that with the left hand. But just to go back to the beginning, I'd like to see them try. But I would like to encourage a little bit of navel gazing and emo, so that we can actually take every opportunity to cut back on the sound as we possibly can. So, for instance, I think every opportunity we have to get softer. Let it end. Let that end too. So I'm saying every one of these gestures can have a bow forward and a bow back. And you don't ever need to think about creating a long line, actually. What we need to find is the truth through each of these gestures. That creates the line, okay? But it's the truth of one note to another. Because if we hit, that doesn't tell us anything. That tells us a lot. And I think I'm not getting too soft at the end there. I'm sure the sound is not quite as good as it was before, but there's no need to go on. We can finish off all of these gestures, and the more we do that dynamically, because that's the parameter that we have the most control over with our instrument, then we can. For now, I would exaggerate, if you wouldn't mind.
even there.
Yeah.
If we play the left hand short, there's no need to grow to this. I find this less a melody than an embroidering of a chord. There's a melodic germ, right? But I know we talk about dynamic contour going up and getting louder, but I find more often than not when I'm thinking vocally, I'm less likely to go than I am to create sort of a sense of height and poise. And so I'm actually diminuendoing to it, right? But we still get a sense of growing to it, going to it, but I think we actually diminuendo. Do you like that?
It does sound
Try it again.
very nice.
Good. Every chance, that was wonderful. And and this is how you play the Sarabande. You really allow yourself and this is exactly the kind of indulgence we need for this whole piece. I think we really need to be looking at this particular part of the prelude in scroll view, like in finale or Sibelius, so that we're not looking at this as a page of material. We are looking at this as just these two voices, and we don't even know what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going to happen, but we're going to react to everything as it happens. And so as you do this, and as you find opportunities to close off little ends before we begin this next thought, that just gives us such a sense of closeness to your performance. This gives us a sense of your intention and how your intention is clothed in his intention. It's you're creating, facilitating the shapes that he's written into this by being able to indulge expressively in the shaping of these lines. So absolutely anything you want to do in as much time as you need, but the more dynamically you can do, the better. You can hear how much better it sounds when we, particularly on the Yamaha, when we really take into account every note is either softer or louder than the one before. And if we can do that in groups of four, a falling tetrachord, oh my gosh, yes. Do it like crazy. Exaggerate. We need to exaggerate all of this. If you start playing things in such a crazy way, I will embrace you rather than exclude you. Seriously. This is, as my friend Vedrina points out, all of the things that I'm suggesting are not extreme. They are all absolutely well within the canon of expressivity as practiced by keyboard players of Bach sometimes. Not in terms of dynamic contrast, but in terms of the space, in terms of the transparency, in terms of creating a legato texture in one line and contrasting that with a transparent texture in the other line. All of this is well within the canon. This is not extreme in the least. So it's our job to take it to the extreme. And especially as we do now, as we are experimenting constantly in performance and in practice, the more variety, the more extreme we can be in our experimentation, the closer we will come to the truth. Try again for me. listen to that all day. You know, that's beautiful. It's just, I mean, it. Once we have, we have a set of tools here for this prelude, and it really works. You know, to allow yourself to delineate and project and convey all of the beauty of the contour of the line, to create even more of a singing line by virtue of the transparency that we allow in the left hand, out of lightness, and using whatever time we need to create the momentum based on the content itself. One thing I want to talk about in bar 21, because all of these, we're embracing these as harmonies as well as melody. Overholding it. Now look at here. He actually marks a slur. He actually, it's like, what do you say to something like that? Oh yeah, nice idea, Johann. Yeah, I was planning on playing that legato anyway, but thanks for the heads up. No, he marks a slur, and so this means various things. It first of all does mean he's likely asking us to overhold the whole thing. That whole thing should be over and hold all of those notes. And I believe that there's probably a clue to have a little bit of space after that slur, or to compress the notes so that there has to be a space before that next E flat. It's definitely not that, right? This is one separate thing. He's marked it, and he marks it nowhere else in the whole movement. And so I think he's marking it as an accent, as a climax, because he's taking this pattern that this chordal idea, and then the melismatic, which are 4 chords. And now really sticky. It might be overheld and probably slower. Might be. I think when he marks a slur, it's something he's asking for. He's asking for a few things: space after it or before it, compressing it, overholding it. It's just a great thing, and he uses it so seldom. We really have to pay attention. He does it again here, 2 bars later. So probably that slur there is probably a good idea not to make that slur. The function of that slur is so it's a we fall from the T, even with a trill, and that makes it hard. We have to. Yeah, that sounds good, Chris. but we really have to make that slur happen. And so that means dynamically, and it means overholdingly, and it probably means a little bit of space. So yeah, every time I see a slur, we have to make a good reason for it. It's not just a good suggestion from Johann. It's a directive. It's a real directive to do something. But that's such a great pleasure to listen to you play that, Ashly. It's beautiful. Now, when we get into these sections, all of these are separate, and then connected. Separate, connected. Separate, connected. I would actually put slurs here, and here, and here. And then, but that's dynamically I'm making those shapes, but he's marking them as syncopations, so he's also giving us a clue that he wants more time. see it as a I don't see it as a Chopinian, a Chopinesque legato connection. I see several things going on here. I think there's a connection dynamically that there's a fall in creating that. But I think there's an articulative separation that creates the conveyance of the interval. And I'm also creating more space here and then and here. So I'm not making it equal. I'm actually, as you do, I'm just saying that it should be more implicit, less explicit. Less. Later on in the piece, we could probably get to a point where we really want to sing that out, and I think it'll be a fine thing. But I think right now, we want to have an implicit sense of connection rather than explicit. Can you try this allegro a little bit?
Sorry. Implicit.
Don't be sorry. Actually, it's a good decision. It's just I feel like we can probably make a better implicit conveyance of your gesture.
So,
Slightly more. I'm doing even a separation between here and here. There's this. I'm connecting them dynamically, but articulatively, I think they're probably separate. Yeah, they're separate. Yes. Yes.
okay. Yeah.
Because I hear the distinction now. I don't hear them. Right. I hear the connection there, but I don't hear them as legato connection.
Right.
I think that's the way to go. You like it?
Yeah, that's different. That's cool.
Good. And what makes that interesting is that builds in some transparency. Because we're not concerned with continuing that momentum and that connection. So it's almost as if this part of the subject is actually, we should think of it in quarter notes. Because when we come up against it later in the piece, so the excitement of the 16ths is not competing with, right? So because we've factored in this transparency. One other thing here, actually, that will help is if we make a parentheses around this D and this B and this G. So prominent note. We still hear them as connected, but I'm making a very clear distinction between foreground and background. Foreground. Right?
Yeah.
They're still connected, but that gives us a lot more room to be shapely with the right hand. If we do it all the same, then we have no transparency to allow the other voices in. That's why I really feel it's important for us to exaggerate this when we do it the first time. We probably won't do it quite that exaggeratedly later on. We'll probably find reason to keep the voice strong. But just to practice it, to have that sense of foreground and background within this, will make it much easier to take both voices and have them do two different things at the same time. So in other words, when you're making more transparency in the eighth notes, and actually I'm saying let's think about them as quarter notes, not overheld by quarter notes, but just structurally, that we can excited with the 16ths. Where am I? Yes. The excitement can happen in those 16ths and can still maintain melodic quality without being too exciting. They don't have to compete with those eighth notes because the eighth notes are now quarter notes and very placid and very foreground and background. We played this from the Allegro a little bit slower so we could hear and maybe experiment a little bit. Excellent. And one thing I loved here, actually, because we were, I think you realized, or we actually, even with this vertiginous crescendo, and or climax, we're all of a sudden in very close quarters again. And there are so many places in the well-tempered clavier, actually, when I find myself in these huge fugues, and all of a sudden I'm just dealing with two solo voices in this beautiful lyric treble dolce register. Let it happen. Let it happen. Let us be there. There you go. Any reason to recap the tempo before then? You know, I mean, it's just allow these friends to to coalesce, to have their conversation. Right. So allow them to have their intimate moment, and don't telegraph. Don't tell us that we're going to get back to the theme. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I'm much more interested actually in these moments, even in this allegro place, where we're finding moments of transparency, intimacy, closeness. The two voices. So that every opportunity we have to get away from the idea of a surging toccata-like tempo. I always find places within every subject to create a contrast of momentum, especially within one theme subject. So for instance, we're thinking of because I don't think there's anything melodic about it. I like that very visceral sense of 16 notes there. That's but then this is sort of a relaxation. And then it's exciting again. So there is a give and take. There's not a presentation of the theme. There's a presentation of the theme with various different rhythmic and dramatic characteristics within it. And they all are composed. And the fact that he marks it this way, I believe, really gives us a sense of how far he wants us to go afield within this one subject. Because this idea of relaxation is abandoned. Just at the very end, he says, "Don't forget, we started out with these 16ths, and we're going to end that way." So people will know the beginning and the end of the subject. What a nice idea. So yeah, we want to be true to every syllable of the subject, because every syllable of the subject will be developed further on in the piece, and so it's going to be its own thing, right? So we want to make sure that we get every character of the theme correct from the very beginning, so that we can then go back and revisit it and recalibrate it in its new character. One more time from the Allegro. have to exaggerate it, but you really have to swallow it in order to give us that sense of space, of perspective, of being able to create a sense of foreground and background. We try that once more. Is that a good place?
Yeah.
Yes, go on. Good. Here's another one of these figures. So I'm always trying to figure out ways of alleviating waxy buildup. Whenever I see repeating notes, so I'm thinking of this. This is very easy because we have a falling tetrachord. I'm actually thinking of this as. Does that sound good? What I'm trying to avoid is. So long, short, long, short. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So keep that in mind. Going right from there or around there, wherever it's convenient. What's becoming clear, actually, I hope is becoming clear, is that there's a lot more room for flexibility dynamically. Are you getting that idea?
There's so many of those falling tetrachords and things. Yeah.
Yes. And there are opportunities for there are opportunities for growth as well. But the point is that I'm hearing much more porousness, like Swiss cheese. There's a lot more air there's a lot more air in the flavor. and the more flexibility we have, I think I know you're realizing there's never any sense of having to maintain a certain level of sound. It's all malleable. And then when there are those moments when we really want to make something sort of exciting in a kinetic sort of way, we have that ability to do that. But all of these other passages, which are so much like another one of these dichotomy things. I'm sure you heard me talk about the three themes of the C sharp minor fugue from Book 1. The first, the cross theme, and then the nails are the second theme, and then the running 16th notes are. I always thought they were the exciting part, sort of the kinetic business that made it very exciting. But he described them as streams of healing. So in fact, they are tears. And so when we look at these passages, we see these scale passages, before we start thinking of them as kinetic, we want to think of them as streams of healing. They're not exciting notes like they would be in a Beethoven sonata. Beethoven sonata notes are twice as fast, they're twice as exciting. In Bach, I think they're twice as connected. I think they're twice as expressive. And so when we have these running 16ths, we want to have even more sense, even more intrinsic sense of note-to-note dynamic shape, always. And always, when we have the opportunity very easy to maintain a general level of sound. It is very difficult to make a falling tetrachord convincing every time, and to also create the environment around those falling tetrachords that make them make sense. So what do we do when we fall? Do we rejuvenate? Do we start again from a very soft dynamic? All of these things are moment-to-moment calibrations, and the more we do with them, the better it sounds. I mean, you're the proof of that right here, as you're playing. Actually, let's go now to the a good place to play like last page or so of this. Would that be a good use to you? Or maybe here. We try from there and work for a bit. I want to take a moment with just dealing with in terms of where we are in the bar. Okay, in the measure. And so the downbeat is the strong beat, and we're coming away as a rebound. So it's probably not the right. Yeah, I'm coming up against more and more exceptions to the rule. Actually, when I said about getting louder when we go higher, it's just not happening too often. I think maybe I'm not sure what it has to do with, but I think maybe it has to do with the function of the rhythm of the measure, and so we're going from a strong beat and we're rebounding to a weak beat. Right? But I think that's definitely the gesture he has in mind. Can you try that again? Excellent. So actually, the way I want you to practice this is listening to every chemical reaction between one note and another, as far as whether it's going to be louder or softer, and and also keeping in mind the contour of the line, and also the transparency of non-melodic notes. So it ends up sounding. Practicing for me would be exploratory like this. The only way to make that kind of stuff happen is practice that slowly. Because look in this measure. Now we have a falling line in the left hand and a rising line in the right hand. And really have to work to make it really convincing. Sorry. So now I'm coming up with the left hand and I'm going down with the right hand. I'm doing, I'm listening to every connection between each two notes. And I'm also trying to keep a very close eye on when the two hands are going in separate directions, or when they have different articulations. If we've got our eighth notes, or our mellifluous 16th notes, if we have those in contrast with another, the only way to cultivate that contrast, is to play it as slowly as I just did. Because that's the only way that we realize when there are moments when the left hand is trying to influence the way the right hand is playing by making it try to do the same thing it is. When the left hand has a different architecture, dynamic arc, left hand is going up, right hand is going down, what are we going to do? The only way to make that happen, not in tempo, is to do it one note at a time. When Rachmaninoff would practice, do you know how slow he would practice? I mean, it has no frame of reference as far as I'm concerned, but he was convinced that playing one note at a time was going to be the only way to do it. I contend that playing very slowly is not drudgery, it's actually magic. Because when we can really get down to that microscopic level and understand the electrical charge, positive or negative, louder or softer, between every note and every next note, we're going to make sounds that we've never made before. Because we're not thinking about, oh, well, I'm going to sing this line, so I want to make it sound good. No, we're actually thinking about doing the job of every gesture, every calculation, every chemical balance, every chemical function between one note and another, going up, going down, getting softer, getting louder, connecting intrinsically or connecting it implicitly. So all of this really involves a lot of very slow practice, and not just diligently slow, but listeningly slow. It's very important to listen to all of these, and you do so much of this listening anyway. Actually, in performance, we can hear your decision making, we can hear your sensitivity and your intuition to the sound of the moment, and that's a wonderful thing. That's what we go to hear performances for. We're going to hear what you are doing with this music. We're going to hear you. So this fugue in particular, I think would be very well served just once through, really slowly, but really, really listening to all of the connections and distinctions between notes, and allowing yourself to create. When we see motions and when we see things like that are obviously more difficult and challenging, those are going to be moments when all of a sudden we're not thinking in 8 notes, we're actually thinking in 16 notes. Da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, and it's going to be that slow. It's going to have to be that slow just for that moment. And then, it's going to be easier to move when you go that kind of Brandenburg kind of movement. It's going to be easier to move that way. So being conscious of the harmonic motion, whether it's 1 per quarter or whether it's happening, 1/16, every 16th something happening, keeping that in mind when we're deciding what the momentum is going to be, what the speed is going to be, taking into account all of the contours, contrasting and otherwise, of both lines. And I think the slower you can make yourself practice, it's not Rachmaninoff slow, but the slower you can make yourself practice it, the more you will discover. Okay. And one other thing that I will mention in this movement is that I talk a lot about accommodation between voices and collaboration between voices. It's not just a matter of taking time in that moment when we need the time. In some cases, it can be thinking ahead and saying, oh, I know that left-hand voice is going to want to take a little bit more time here, so maybe if I take a little bit more time in the right hand, a quarter note beforehand, it'll give the environment a much better setup so the left hand can take time in a way that feels natural and less obtrusive. So the other part of this slow practice is involved with creating a collaboration and accommodation between voices that we can't do at tempo. We just can't. We'll be able to if we do this kind of slow practice, and we'll have much more information to impart. That's the most important thing. The more information we have to give to folks, the better it is. And there are so many thousands of players, Ashly, who are playing. I'm just going to get all these voices out and clear and that's just going to be the best. That's the best I can do. That's the best anybody can hope for. There were no dynamics on the harpsichord. They didn't have any of this. Well, they had other things, and we need to avail ourselves of them and avail ourselves of those advantages that the piano does have, like enormous dynamic contrast. Are you doing the Sarabande? Yes,
Yeah.
Sarabande. Yeah. Good. Excellent. This reminds me of something, Ashly. When we get to this measure here, well, actually, even at the beginning, those quarter notes reminds me very much of. So that there's if we just look at it from the quarter note standpoint, it gives the prelude a sort of a schematic structure. And I think that happens similarly here. I think if we take the quarter notes as guideposts, we can use them as indications to take these gestures as gestures rather than lines. So, for instance, here's a quarter note. I find it compelling to look at this as just one gesture. And again, I tend to I voice it melodically as I would if I were playing it like a chord, right? The upper voice is there, but it's not. So I'm not playing. Right? I'm playing. I'm creating them as sort of sonorities rather than lines. And so I'm using those cues of those quarter notes that he's given us as maybe invitations for a little bit of overholding. And I think for me the first clue that I think I'm right is when he comes, because this is it's very expressive altogether, but when he goes, that's definitely that's a hallmark. He's just embroidering that. It's just a falling third. It's not. It's just. And so I think all of these can be thought of in exactly that same way. And then this is not eighth notes, not chord notes. So that has actually spoken. What I was saying before about those motives that can actually end in midair. We don't have to connect it. We don't have to connect it. We don't connect those. We just. That's another reason for him to have those quarter notes, so we can have the willingness, the bravery to let go. You hear what I mean? So that sense of finding the buoyancy in this line when we possibly can. This is the truth of the gesture. There's embroidery around that deep. So it's damnably tempting to look at these 16th notes and say, oh well, look, there they are, one after another. I'll play them one after another. But to try and conceive of them as gestures that we hold in our hand, and to take his cue of the quarter note as a way of saying, yes, I'm recommending that you overhold this and that you think of these as more sonorities than melodies. I think that's one of his more famous clues. And so this is for a change. It's a nice invitation for more legato than I would normally recommend in this music. You know. There again, as much as I'm recommending the molasses, the honey treatment, the sticky treatment for this, I'm recommending the opposite in the left hand. Right? I'm not recommending the left hand legato. Right? I'm recommending whatever the right hand is doing, not radically opposite, but different. It's just slightly separated. Always what a falling tetrachord is going to do. It's always going to fall. Try one more time from the beginning, and as slow as you like. We're experimenting here, actually. Okay.
Okay. I just had a question about overholding.
Yes.
So is that just when you're going between two notes, you just hold the first note a bit longer before taking it off, like just a really legato?
Well, I think overholding is definitely designated when he actually marks them as a slur, for instance.
Yes.
And I think intonation-wise, overholding is very good when we're doing things like a minor second. You know, that's a good reason for overholding. But in this situation, I'm actually talking about overholding not just this first 16th. I'm talking about the whole thing. I'm holding all of them.
Okay. Yeah.
You know. To a certain degree. I mean, I'm not totally sticky about it. But I find when he's designating one of these notes as resonant, I'm thinking he's saying, hold these in your hand. Hold these all in your hand. You know what I mean? You know what I'm doing? And that has to do with legato and overholding, but it also, more than anything, it has to do with the tapering of dynamics, so that we're not maintaining a sound. We're actually so I'm really creating all of these opportunities for more transparency. Every diminuendo I can make, I'm making. One more time. Just do this, actually. Just don't even think of it as a melody. Just yes. Do you hear how smooth that is? Do you hear how beautiful and legato that is? That's the way you have to play the melody. There's no reason to play it any louder than that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Try it again. Yes. was the fact that you really created this wonderful space for the resolution by creating much more flexibility in the left hand much earlier than I would normally envision. And because of that, because you prepare it so beautifully, you prepare this poise so beautifully, then it just proceeds and sounds in a very, very natural way. That's quite gorgeous. Can you hear this in the second part? Again. No need to play loud. It emerges. It's just really, you just really need to caress the shape of it, and the sound will come out. Yes. I've got some of these slurs as optional. This one and this one optional. Now I have all of these as slurred.
Yeah.
All of these have to really be overheld. Just really sticky. I'm taking a little bit of a Gogic space between every one of those slurs. He marks them on every corner. It's desperate. It really is desperate. And the thing that it isn't, and the reason he marks these slurs is it's not. I mean, that sounds glorious, but that's not what he's after. It's the other part of Agogic, and I think another part of this possible execution of these slurs is to in the usual the commonly known idea of Agogic is to delay an accent created by rhythm rather than emphasis, rather than by force. So that would be. So really, excessively holding the first one of each of those four groups, each of those four groups. So just another opportunity for us to say, when he marks a slur, it's more than a good idea. It's something very special that he wants you to do. So let's try that from around there, wherever's comfortable. Wherever you like.
Okay.
Doesn't that have a sense of don't you feel like a revolutionary? Holding them on like that, so sloppy. But that's absolutely, it's absolutely what he's asking for, actually. And you can do that one here. Marks them both the same. and it's excruciating.
Mm.
But it's what he's asking for. It's really what he's asking for. That was beautiful. And then, and actually, I don't know about you, but I would you do that on the repeat.
Ooh. No, I haven't done that one. Yeah.
That's a nice one.
Mm.
So do that on the repeat.
Okay. I have 2 slows in that bar as well. Is that
Yes,
something?
me too.
Yeah.
Yes, those are also both. Right?
Mm.
Yeah, right?
Okay.
So let's play right from there. Yes. One more thing. The slurs, space. It's not just a little bit of space, but it has to be there.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm gonna ask us to cultivate a particular thing. This is one of those places where I think we should have voices within voices. So here's one voice. So when we have those fifths, I think we want to overhold the bottoms of them, so we create this sense of having 2 voices in one. So that sounds like. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm. Yeah.
Try it again. Actually, the easiest way to do it is to just overhold those 2 and these 2. Yes. 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 Yeah, that's glorious. And I mean, there is a reason why some of his codas get very complicated, and it's because he wants it to be the most expressive. And so as you do, you give more and more space. All of these the intervals become more and more. And that beautiful D flat, the way you did it. All of these half steps you're doing so beautifully. And you made this such a beautiful that beautiful caress that I was telling you about. That was gorgeous. I love his fermatas, where he puts the fermata. Sometimes he puts it at the end of a note. Here, because we're in a partita, he actually puts the fermata on the bar line, because he really doesn't want to have any sense of going on to the rondo. wants there to be an absolute separation. Actually, at the end of the G minor fugue in Book 1, there's a fermata on the bar line, and there's a fermata on the bar line of the previous fugue. So there's a situation where we never thought that the Weltable Clavier should be played as a set, but he's actually making a very specific designation that you're not to go on to the next movement without creating our own new space, and he marks that by fermata. I'd make a point of looking at every movement between every prelude and fugue, because if there's a fermata on the bar line between the prelude and fugue, I realize I'm not supposed to be trying to create some sense of connection of tempo, designation between the prelude and the fugue. He means this is a new world. We want this to be a whole new world, and so it's very important to see where he marks those fermatas. But yes, I was looking at this on paper, and I thought, my God, Ashly's going to have such a great time with this from bar 19 to the end, because it's all these wonderful, craggy, expressive intervals and all these caresses, and it's just gorgeous. And so the way you really bring this together at the end is so beautiful. And this is my favorite movement of yours so far, the Sarabande. Yeah, it's really great.
Thank you. It's kind of magical to be exploring it like this. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and because I think this way we really figure out, it's not just a matter of a wonderful melody that he's written, it's that he's given us a set of gestures that we can exploit and make this the best it can be. And so it's up to us to really to make the gestural aspects of those motives so intrinsic to our whole character that this sarabande sounds like no other sarabande, because it's this set of materials that he's given us, and that he said, I want you to really expand on these ideas. These are the ideas I'm giving to you, and I want you to do more with them. And that's what you're doing. And it's just amazing. And yet, as you say, it's fantastic to be able to explore this piece in exactly this kind of way, to really try and get at his intent. It's one thing to say, oh, well, yeah, it's a sarabande, so let's make sure that we're really bowing to the second beat. It's very important to okay, yeah, that's fine. But I think even more molecularly, it's so much more interesting to do that kind of experimenting. And I would still recommend, Ashly, practicing, even as slow as this sarabande is, to create an even more intrinsic sense of the shape that we're trying to get in the prelude, in the andante, and in the fugue, by practicing really slowly to really get a sense of, again, the sense of chemical balance between every two notes. The more diminuendo we can work in at a slow tempo, the more it will become just a matter of just the way we play the piece, when we get it up to tempo. But we really have to cultivate it at this very, very slow tempo. And the more exaggerated we can be in that slower tempo, that's where the experimentation happens, that's where the magic happens, and that's where we make these decisions. It's not a question of, well, I'll play it again later today and it'll probably be better. No, let's go through it slowly, and then when we go through it in tempo, we'll say, oh, there was that idea I thought of, but I didn't do it because we did take enough time. We have to make all our discoveries at this tempo. This is where we make all our discoveries, and then we incorporate them into a tempo that we feel is most conveying of our intentions and of his intentions. Actually, I can't believe we got to work all this time together. It's so wonderful. It's so great.
It's been amazing. Yeah.
Actually, it's so wonderful, and it's so wonderful to hear you and to actually meet you and interact with you.
Yeah.
Meet again soon, okay?
Thank you so much, Mr. O'Reilly. Yeah, I'll see you in the Facebook group. Thank you for today.
So inspiring to be with you, Ashly. Thank you so much. Beautiful,
Thank you.
beautiful work. Thank you. I'm so touched.
Yeah, thank you so much.